All right, let's just dive right in. We're about to tackle one of the biggest, oldest, and most profound questions anyone has ever asked. It's a question that sits at the very heart of cutting-edge science, ancient philosophy, and, our own personal search for meaning.
I mean, seriously, why is there something rather than just nothing? Why does anything exist at all? Now, it might seem completely unanswerable, but for centuries, some of the sharpest minds in history have used a powerful tool of pure logic to try and find a path to an answer. It's called the Kalam cosmological argument, and it tries to build a bridge from ancient reason all the way to modern science to show that the universe itself points to something beyond itself.
And the real beauty of this argument is just how simple it is. This isn't about getting bogged down in complex formulas or super dense philosophy. It's a straightforward chain of logic that's been sharpened and refined for centuries. And get this isn't some new idea somebody just cooked up. The Kalam argument has this incredibly rich history. It was first developed by brilliant medieval Arabic and Islamic philosophers like Al-Ghazali, and then it was picked up by Christian thinkers. And today, it's being discussed with a whole new life, thanks to evidence from modern cosmology. It's an argument that has really, truly stood the test of time. So, what is it? What's the big argument? It's just a simple three-step logical formula. Let's walk through it nice and slow. First step, whatever begins to exist has a cause. This feels pretty intuitive, right? I mean, things don't just pop into being out of absolutely nothing. Step two, the universe began to exist. Now this is the controversial one. This is the line where most of the debate really happens. And if you accept those first 2 points, the conclusion just follows logically. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Okay, so that brings us to the absolute core of the debate, right? How can we be so sure the universe isn't just eternal? What if it's always been here? Well, this is where both modern science and some really old philosophy offer some fascinating support for that second premise. Let's see how. So first up, let's talk science. I want you to think of the entire universe like a giant battery that's slowly draining. The second law of thermodynamics, which is a bedrock principle of physics, tells us that in a closed system, which the universe is, usable energy is always, always running down. It's all moving toward a final state called heat death. So if the universe is running down, that means it must have been wound up at some point. If the universe had been here for an infinite amount of time, it should have completely burned out by now. The fact that stars are still shining, that the energy in your phone still works, that's powerful evidence that it hasn't been running forever. It had to have a starting point.
Okay, so that's the science. Now let's get into the philosophy. And this one, well, it's a bit of a mind bender, so stick with me. Imagine trying to arrive at this very moment, today, by counting up from negative infinity. You could never get here, could you? Because infinity has no end, and it also has no beginning. The argument is that an actual, real, infinite number of past moments is just as impossible. Think of it like trying to climb a ladder that has an infinite number of rungs stretching down into the past. To get to the top rung, which is today, you would have had to climb an infinite number of rungs, but that's a task that can never, ever be completed. So for us to be here now, the past just can't be infinite. There must have been a first event, a real beginning.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds pretty compelling from science and philosophy, but you can't make a claim this huge without getting some major pushback, right? So let's do it. Let's tackle the 2 biggest objections head on. First up, and this is probably the one I hear the most, what about quantum mechanics? Don't we hear about these virtual particles just popping in and out of existence in a vacuum, seemingly out of nowhere? So does modern physics disprove that very first premise? This is such a crucial point. That quantum vacuum, it isn't nothing, not even close. It's a roiling sea of fluctuating energy. It's a pre-existing physical system that's governed by the laws of physics. These particles arise from something. Absolute nothingness, on the other hand, well, it has no properties, no energy, no laws. It can't do anything because it isn't anything. So quantum mechanics isn't showing things coming from true nothingness, but from a very, very complex something. All right, and that leads us right into the classic comeback, the one everybody thinks of. If everything needs a cause, well, what caused the first cause? What caused God? Doesn't the whole argument just contradict itself? And this is where we have to be super precise. Let's go back to that very first premise. It doesn't say everything has a cause. It says whatever begins to exist has a cause. See the difference? The rule only applies to things that have a starting point. The argument leads to a cause that is eternal, uncaused, self-existent, something that, by its very nature, never began to exist. The universe began, so it needs a cause. The first cause didn't, so it doesn't.
Okay, so if we follow the logic all the way through, we land at this pretty incredible conclusion. There has to be an uncaused first cause of the entire universe. But what does that even mean? What can we actually know about it just from the argument itself?
A good way to think about this is like the strands of a rope. One single argument, one strand, might not seem strong enough to hold up such a massive idea, but when you start weaving them together, that's when you get a really strong case. And the Kalam argument, it's like one of the foundational strands of that rope. So, just based on the logic we've walked through, we can actually figure out a few incredible things about this first cause. Since it created space and time, it must exist beyond space and time, which would make it immaterial and eternal. And to create the entire universe from nothing, it would have to be unimaginably powerful. And as the ultimate starting point, it has to be uncaused.
But, and this is super important to be clear about, we have to be really honest about what this argument doesn't prove. The Kalam argument all by itself doesn't get you to the God of any specific religion. It doesn't prove that this cause is personal or good or that it's still involved with the universe. Its scope is actually very narrow, but it's also incredibly profound. It simply argues for an eternal, uncaused, and immensely powerful creator of the universe.
So where does that leave us? We've walked through this incredible chain of logic, starting from a really simple observation about, well, everything, and ending with a truly staggering conclusion. Our universe had a beginning, and that beginning needs a cause. The argument doesn't answer every question for us. Instead, it kind of leaves us with one. It puts the evidence right at our feet and asks us to decide, if the universe is the effect, what kind of cause best explains everything we see?